just confirm that we are live. Looks like we're live. For some reason, they can see you, they can't see me.
Well, that doesn't work.
I'm assuming that will just work itself out. There we go. Okay. So welcome everybody. Today is day 95 of 100 days of self-love. And today I wanted to talk about how much I love Feng Shui. So I've invited my friend Pat McGrath here to talk about Feng Shui and why it's so important to help us live our lives easily and effortlessly. So welcome, Pat. How are you?
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me. I'm doing good. I'm coming out of a big dark night of the soul. And so it's feeling pretty good right now. It's interesting that you mentioned love, because this is what I wrote down as I was making my notes to myself. Sometimes people need permission to love what they love, which is what I find in their homes sometimes when we discuss things. I mean, as a feng shui consultant, you don't walk into someone's house socially and recognize anything. You don't see anything. You only find out about the space when you talk to the person who's living there or working there. And you find out the meanings of all the things that they surround themselves with. And you can tell, certainly after doing it for 20 years, the emotion that's in their voice when they tell you and describe to you, like art on the wall or furniture in the room or objects that they've collected, and what it means to them. And I'm always surprised at how many times I come across people that are putting stuff up because they thought it was the right thing to do, but they really don't like it. And what I see from my perspective is that's affecting their energy and they don't even know it. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the fun part. You know, ultimately it's up to them, but I just point out to them what they just said. I just use their words and give it back to them and say, this is the energy of the piece that you're talking about. And if you've asked me to come to change something, help you change something, it's my job to point out what's already there that's not working for you, or maybe it's working for you, but not in that location. Maybe just moving it to a different location might help. So we decide that together, but I use the principles of Feng Shui to educate them to what's working and then make suggestions, but it's up to them whether they want to make those changes or not.
So there may be people on here who have never heard of Feng Shui or don't know what it's about. So can you explain a little bit of Feng Shui?
It's about your space, the space around you. The way I studied it, it was explained many times that the aspect of feng shui that people don't recognize is the spiritual aspect of it. Is people's lives are sacred. So by extension, the places that they spend the most time on or in are also considered sacred. And that's so important in terms of keeping people's spirits in alignment with what it is that they want their lives to be about. So it goes much deeper than what we're used to. But once we get into discussing it, people recognize it for what it is. They feel, oh, I don't have to do something that's right or wrong. I just have to be in alignment with what I'm living with. And because we live in such, and certainly in this country, live in such a commercial environment that we're used to buying things, and there's much more available for us to buy things that are cheaper than they were, say, for instance, when our parents were alive. So we have more. And lots of times the purchasing is mindless and people end up with way too much stuff. They liked it in the moment, but living with it is a different matter. And just become, so I'm there to raise awareness to what is working for them and what is not working for them based on what they tell me they want to change. So I asked them in the beginning, what would you like to change in your life in the next 6 months? And then we go around and look at the space, and I make mental notes, and then we discuss everything. Or I ask them, tell me about this piece, tell me about that piece, how meaningful this is to you? Oh, so and so gave it to me, but I never really liked it. Well, that's when I have to point out that then that's not really working for you, you know. But lots of people will keep on stuff because they think they owe someone else respect or acknowledgement by keeping something that they don't really like themselves. So it's my job to point out that this is your life, and what we want for you is to surround yourself with things that help you be who you are and help support what you want to do.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think the exciting thing about working with a Feng Shui expert like you is that things shift quickly. I think we got together about a year ago, more than a year ago right now, a year and a half. And some of my goals were visibility and create a bigger impact. And I can see how just by shifting the energy in the home, it's it's helped me to become more aligned and things show up faster, the things we want to show up.
Yeah, and sometimes, you know, it's like what you do with pain. You know, when the pain is gone, people forget. So when things start showing up, that lots of times people don't make the connection between, oh, well, I just did this. I had a conversation with a client last night in California because we're all doing stuff remotely now because of COVID for the last year. And he had sent me a bunch of photographs. And so we had a long conversation about what, based on what he said he wanted. But then there were things that I did see that I had to ask him. For instance, how are you sleeping? And he said, well, not really that well. But I knew right away because the bed was, it was a new location for him. The bed was right near a big picture window, and there was a huge television screen on the wall. And so I made some recommendations for that. And he said last night that he's sleeping much better, and that doing one thing, I told him how to bring a mirror into the other side of the apartment where there was no windows, and it was going to reflect the natural light from outside. And he said it's been nonstop for him ever since in terms of his business. And so I had to laugh because I thought, well, maybe he's not calling me because nothing happened or he didn't make any changes. No, he's just been so busy. He didn't have time to call me. So those are really nice things because I'm happy for him.
Yeah, and it's exciting when that happens,
Yeah.
right? I know for me it was. It was like, oh my God, I did this and this happened.
Even his dog is excited.
So can you share why you got into it and
Sure.
what got you started?
Okay, so in a second marriage, we moved into a condo and had a lot of stuff from our former lives in big houses. So we weren't quite sure how to decorate because I'm in a mill building with 14-foot ceilings, and it's not the same as putting up a poster or a piece of art on a wall of a normal size wall. These walls are huge. And so I wasn't quite sure what I was doing. And after a while, I didn't feel comfortable. And I felt like I couldn't really put my finger on it. I felt anxious in the home, and at the same time, I couldn't leave. So it was all very vague. And I read about this woman in a newspaper article, and she was talking about Feng Shui, and I had never heard of it. But when she started talking about the energy, I somehow, on some level, I just understood what she was saying. And so I gave her a call, and she came to my place, and my husband was at work. And as we started talking, I started getting really excited because I totally understood what she was saying, but I didn't know the vocabulary. And because Feng Shui principles are based in nature. And inside a mill building, there is no nature. It's all former industrial and huge windows, which I would call not human scale. and tall ceilings and lots of stairs. And in some ways, the way this building was renovated, it was like a maze. So part of our condo goes over someone else's living room. And so it took a while. So the confusion of where I was, you know, I like to know where I'm at. I like to look at a map when I go somewhere. I want to know where I'm at. I couldn't even figure out where I was in my own condo. So when I read about this article, I invited this woman, and it was just eye-opening. And she said, you know, you're getting this right away. We're starting a school. You should come. So I went, and the first weekend was about clutter, and I was hooked, because I grew up in a house where my mother couldn't throw anything out. And so, and now I understand that on a much deeper level. But what I tell people is, when I started to learn about it, I learned the vocabulary for stuff that I already knew, but didn't know how to manifest it in my own life. So that was fun.
Yeah, it is fun. And I think it's a whole new concept for people, is talking about the energy of our own personal energy, the energy of the space that we're in, and how to align it all. Because the awesomeness, when everything's in alignment, life gets really, really fun.
And I think that this year particularly has been tough, because so many people had to all of a sudden work from home. You need a different energy for work than you do for sleeping, than you do for socializing, than you do for teaching your children. And we all had different spaces for that before we were all quarantined. And now quarantining has made us all do all of that stuff in one location. And it's been really stressful for a lot of people. And part of it is their space, and they don't even know why, you know?
Yes.
So,
Well, and even as you were talking, like when you're at work in an office, you're dealing with so many other people's energy.
yeah,
So
that's
there's so much more things to occupy our minds
true. Mhm.
that we're not even focused on ourselves. But now that people are home, they've been forced to focus on their environment at home for a year. And you talked about clutter. And I think that's one thing I hear from a lot of people, is that they've been decluttering their homes.
You know, I saw a TV show the other day. The clutter is such an important topic, and it goes to a very deep level. And I saw this show the other day, and I thought, oh man, the suggestions that were being made were not on the level that you make it on Feng Shui. You can't really make anybody get rid of anything. They have to be ready to let something go. And it's a deeper process. They have to feel good about not only letting it go, but where it's going. So some people take a lot of time to determine what they want, where they want a piece of clothing to go, or where they want a piece of furniture to go, or they want to feel good about where it's going because it has personal history for them. And they don't want to dishonor their ancestors who they inherited it from, or somebody who gave it to them that was moving, or whatever. I mean, there's so many layers to this that I really like to recommend to people to go slow when you start making changes in your environment. It's so powerful.
Yeah.
We have a
Yeah.
relationship with everything that we walk by every single day. You know, we look at it, we pile things on it, or we have to be careful when we carry something by it, and then all of a sudden that thing isn't there. You feel the loss, but you don't really give yourself permission to grieve it or whatever when it's not there anymore. So it's really about understanding your relationship with all these things. And either obviously when you have a family, you're also dealing with other people's stuff also. And that gets tricky, but the recommendation there is you can't even tell people in your own house to get rid of something. You can only show them by example how much fun it is to get rid of something.
Yes, you you plant seeds is what I call it.
Yeah.
And Wendy and Joyce are actually online. So
Oh,
good morning, everybody. And Wendy says it's a love-hate relationship, and that's so true. And I wanted to talk about, I had moved one piece of furniture in my home right outside my massage room where I am now. And I started feeling vulnerable. And vulnerable is not a word that I really use, but that was the feeling. So it was interesting to actually experience moving something out of a space and feeling that emotion. So can you talk about how clutter, why is it important to declutter?
I don't think people understand how clutter is giving them a foggy brain. And when they let go of something like you're talking about, and there's an empty space there where something used to be, that loss is a loss of protection.
Yeah.
There are people that collect things for protection, to put things in the environment. One of the things that we learn is that you don't have to fill up every space. It's not required. And when every space gets filled up, even in the corners, people have a hard time recognizing when they've created blocks in their life and they get stuck. And once they open up the space, they have the opportunity to see themselves in a different way. It feels a little freeing, and they have to get used to that because they've been overprotecting themselves for a long time.
Right.
And so, that's another level of it. It's the why do you have all these things? I remember going into a home once when the wall of it was etagere, I forget how you pronounce that, but these open shelf units with a huge collection of blown glass vases. And they were gorgeous. And it was a collection. And so I knew that I had to be super careful speaking to the family that was collecting this, because it was meaningful to them. However, I know from a Feng Shui perspective, when you have many things, sometimes you can't appreciate one, because the eye doesn't know what to settle on. It's always jumping around. And so it's hard to appreciate one thing when there's 25 of them. So there's so many different aspects to this whole thing. And that's just clutter. Clutter is energy. Clutter is about energy. It's not necessarily Feng Shui. Feng Shui's principles are all based in nature. And so that is a layer where you're talking about the energy of wood, or the energy of earth, or the energy of metal or water, and what is needed in a place. So if you were to think in terms of water, the quality of water, at one end we have stagnant water, and the other end we have rushing waterfalls. So it's one thing to visit that, but it's another thing to live next to it or to live with it. So in modern day, and because this is ancient stuff, in modern day, a rushing waterfall is like living next to a busy highway. And a stagnant pond is like living next to like broken down buildings, or something where nothing is happening, and you feel that in your life. You feel that your life starts to identify with what's happening around you. And it kind of, it works on your mindset. When I tell people, clutter is like even planting bushes and trees. A lot of people, Connecticut has it's one of the states that has the most trees per linear mile. And you know that from being associated with a energy company. Those people are responsible for the lines. And And I noticed it. It really hit me one time when we were in a plane taking off during the fall, where all the trees are different color. And I'm looking down, and that's when you really notice how many trees we have. So believe it or not, I'll go to home and people want to plant more trees. And I have to point out how many trees they already have. Oh, but I want privacy over in this corner of my yard, whatever. So that's okay, as long as you're not creating a block. So when you start to plant too many trees and you can't see what's in front of you, it affects your idea of what the opportunities are out there. And it's like driving behind a semi. You can't see into the distance. You have to get around the truck in order to see what's coming or where you're going. And the same thing when you open your, or you look out your window and you open the door and you don't see anything because you have so many, you have high hedge or all these trees. And so it affects your attitude about what's out there.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And one more thing about clutter. I know when I would, years ago, I had a lot more clutter than I do now. And I would just look at everything and it would be telling my brain I have one more thing to do. But when it's clean, my mind goes, ah, and I purposely like open that room just to see how clean it is, right? Because it makes you feel good. It lifts your spirits.
It's less responsibility. This is what vacations are all about, getting away from your stuff. Because everything you own and see and collect you have to clean it, move it, dust it, take care of it in some way. And so when you were looking at your clutter, you mean that you had to do something with it? When you say it made you realize you had one more thing to do, what did you mean?
It was a mess. So I had to clean it up. One more thing to organize, one more thing to put on my list to clean that stuff up.
Well, I think at some point, when you have young children, that's very typical of bringing more stuff in than you're taking out, right? And then when they grow up and move, and it's like, why am I keeping this stuff? My son is, 50? Do I still have his high school yearbook? What is the point of that? Time for him to take control of that. But some people don't want to let go of stuff like that because I don't know why, and if you ask them why, they don't know why either.
They don't either. We're just attached. We can't let go. There's an addiction of not letting go. So Joy says Feng Shui is a fun journey and I love the change in energy she experiences. So what last advice or tip do you have for people about their space?
Consider it sacred and be mindful about what you surround yourself with, because if it's really something that has bad memories with it, or when you really think about it, it doesn't make you feel good about yourself, then maybe it's time to relocate it. And that could be at Goodwill, or it could be in another room.
Absolutely. Yeah. Awesome. Well, this was great, Pat. And can you let people know how they can get a hold of you? And then as time goes on today, just leave your information, if a phone number, email, if they have more questions.
Okay. So I am redoing my website and having trouble with my email. And so I'm really, I have to figure all that stuff out with the help of some of my friends. Asking for help is part of the journey here, right? But should I give my telephone number out?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. 860-490-3016.
And we'll type it in the comments. You can
Okay.
put your information there. You're on Facebook. Everybody can connect with you on Facebook and call you. And yeah, if you have any questions, I highly recommend Pat to help you align your space to your dreams. So thank you for watching, everybody. Have a great day. And again, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments for Pat.
Thank you, Jackie.
You're welcome. One more thing. dun.